welcome to the Secret Agents of Consciousness podcast. My name is Genevieve Faulkner, your host, and if you're watching this on YouTube, hi! So today I wanted to do a podcast about having your voice in the world. Like, what does it take to have your voice? What does it take to be able to speak up and be you authentically in the world? So one of the parts of that is the willingness to be vulnerable. If you don't have the willingness to be vulnerable, which is effectively like being willing to show up in the world without any kind of walls, without any kind of barriers, the willingness to be seen for what you are without any kind of resistance, without having to prove anything or maintain any kind of image. Without that willingness to be vulnerable, it can be very, very hard to have your voice in the world and to be able to express yourself. So what eliminates the ability to be vulnerable? Like, why would people not choose that? Part of the reason is because in this reality, we often get programmed into believing that vulnerability is something that is a weakness. It makes you powerless. And yet, what if that's actually a lie? What if vulnerability is actually a strength? It allows you to be open to receiving the world effectively beyond any kind of barriers. And when you're willing to receive the world without a judgment and receive yourself without a judgment, nothing can actually affect you all that much because you're willing to be in communion with whatever is. So the less judgment you have, the less points of view, the less separation there is between you and anything in the outside world, which means you're willing to be more of you. And the more you're willing to be, the easier being in the world becomes. So I just mentioned image. One of the big things that stops people from having the vulnerability is the images that they think that they have to portray. And in this world, there's so much of that, like a lot of social media, there's a lot of like people kind of maintaining a certain image and always like kind of posting the best parts of their life and not necessarily posting the other stuff that goes on behind the scenes. And so what if you didn't have to maintain any kind of image? Whenever you're trying to maintain an image, and often people getting trained into this, so if you had like a perfectionist parent or a controlling parent or a parent that didn't really feel like they were good enough, then they may have projected or like needed you to project an image in order to maintain some sort of idea of perfection or idea of who they are or who the family was in order to feel like they're good enough. And that's the thing with image, is often the image is a creation designed to hide the insecurities and the judgments that the person has of themselves behind the image. And what if those judgments are actually a lie anyway? So what if from the place of being an allowance of you and acknowledging what you are without having a judgment of it, what if you didn't need to hide anything? What if there wasn't anything wrong to be or anything right to be? Like, what if you're being you, you just are what you are? So beyond the need to be right is where you can actually, or get things right in other people's eyes, is where you can actually start to be you. And so one of the things, if you're someone that's struggled to kind of be you in the world or have your voice in the world, you might want to look at like, are you trying to maintain an image? Are you trying to get things right? Are you presenting some sort of imagery in order to hide some sort of insecurity? And if you are, you want to ask yourself, okay, what judgments do I have of me? What have I decided that I need to hide from the world? What have I decided is unlovable and unreceivable about me that makes me have to hold on to this image? And you can use the Access Consciousness clearing statement to clear whatever comes up. If you don't know about that, I'll leave a link below this video or below the podcast so that you can read up on that and start exploring using that. But the other thing is you want to ask, okay, did either one of my parents or somebody close to me have a need for image? And am I trying to maintain the image for them? What loyalty do you have to others that makes you need to maintain the image that they've decided you need to be? Because often what can occur when you're in relationship with other people, if they've got a need for image, and you're not willing to be what you are or lose the relationship beyond what they're willing to be, then you'll often feel like you can't necessarily voice your point of view or be you in the world and express yourself, because it would betray the relationship because of their need for you to maintain some sort of imagery, okay? And so what if what if you're actually being a gift when you're willing to go beyond the lies and the insecurities and the judgments that other people have? And what if no relationship or person is really worth giving you up for? Like, what if there is so much value to you being you in the world and having your voice? What contribution are you to other people, like being them and having a voice in the world? Also, if you're willing to speak up and say what is true for you, what if that actually has the power to dissolve so much of the lies and limitations that other people function from? One thing that I've noticed with Access Consciousness classes, like with both my own and the ones that I've attended, is that when somebody's willing to get to the microphone and kind of like be really vulnerable and voice what is going on for them, it will often tend to dissolve the walls and barriers in the room and will allow like everybody else to step into a whole new level of vulnerability with themselves, because that one person was willing to choose that. And so what if you could be that? What if you are surrounded by people that have a need for image or a need to maintain the rightness of this reality or, you know, perfection or whatever that is? What can you be beyond what they're willing to be? And what gift could you be if you were willing to be that? Now, another thing that limits people from having their voice in the world is often like the unresolved abuse programs that they may have. So if you had any kind of abuse in childhood, if you were gaslighted or beyond in other relationships, one of the things that can happen is it can create a lot of doubt in your world about what is true. And you can get kind of programmed into believing that you are wrong a lot and that you're a problem or that you're being insensitive, based upon whatever the person who's been gaslighting or abusing you has been saying to you in order to try and maintain control of you so that they can either hold on to you or just kind of like stop you out creating them, or whatever else the reason is that they are choosing what they're choosing with regards to you. So what would it take for you to heal yourself from any abuse programming? Part of that is the willingness to acknowledge that it occurred. Because if you've had any kind of gaslighting in relationships, especially like in childhood, like if your parents were people that were used a lot of gaslighting, and there's a lot of it on this planet, and a lot of it is repeated family patterns that, the parents didn't even realize they were doing it because it was just part of the way that they were parented, so part of the undoing or unraveling or getting free from abuse programming is the acknowledgement that it occurred. So if you haven't already, you might want to check out the other podcast I did on gaslighting. You might want to read up on gaslighting, get aware of what those behaviors are, and look at like the places and spaces where, okay, where have I been gaslighted and I haven't wanted to acknowledge it? Where have I been entrained into getting things right in somebody else's world? Where am I functioning from any kind of abuse coping mechanisms like people pleasing? Where am I giving up myself for somebody else's reality? Where have I decided that I cannot speak up out of loyalty to somebody else? These are the things you want to explore, being questioned about, and then you can use the Access Consciousness clearing statement to clear it so that you can start to be you beyond everybody else. Like, what if there was nothing worth giving you up for? The other thing is like, you might want to look at like, what are your points of view about being seen? I know for me, like for a really long time, like I used to be really like frightened of being seen by people. And part of that was because for me, I'd linked subconsciously being seen with being judged. So effectively it was like, nobody could look at me, which is kind of true because most people do function from a lot of judgment. They have points of view, even when they don't even realize that they're judging, they're often judging. And so for me, like I had this sensitivity to judgment where it was like, if somebody looked at me, it was like, this is so intense, they're like judging me. And so what if you didn't make other people's judgments real, significant, or true for you? Other people's judgments, they're not actually about you. They're about what that person is either willing to be or not willing to be, okay? So if you acknowledge that no judgment is personal, that is the wall of their reality. And so what if the more you're actually willing to receive those judgments, the greater your world can be and the more ease you can have with expressing yourself and being you in the world, because you don't make their judgments significant enough to be the wall of your reality. And so one of the things that you can do that I've mentioned probably before on these podcasts is use the Access Consciousness clearing, not the clearing statement, the tool, interesting point of view. So what if every single judgment that you're aware of, what if it was just an interesting point of view? What if it wasn't personal? What if it wasn't relevant to you? Now, the other thing that you can do is if in moments where you're trying to express yourself and you can't, you might want to expand out, because especially if you're dealing with someone that does have a lot of judgment, because when somebody has a lot of judgment, they can have this kind of intensity and this like laser beam type energy that if you're someone that's sensitive and psychic, you might pick up on that, and then you can start to feel like you can't get the words out, or you'll start to stutter. And if you're actually willing to occupy way more space, what if that intensity of their judgment wouldn't be so dense and significant in your world? And so then what if you could then express yourself clearly and with more ease? So I hope that has contributed to you guys. If there is anything else that you would like me to create a podcast on, please do get in touch. If this has been a contribution, feel free to leave me some comments, subscribe to my video channel, and yeah, if there's anything else, please do get in touch. Thank you so much, guys. I'm very grateful for you. See you later.